Tron Legacy tells you who the villain is. He wears black, he commands an army, he commits genocide, and in the final act, he tries to invade the real world with a digital armada. Clue is the villain. The movie makes that explicitly clear. Kevin Flynn is the tragic hero. He's a visionary creator betrayed by his own creation. Except there's a moment near the end of the film that nobody talks about, a confession hidden in plain sight. Clue screams at his creator, 20 years of rage compressed into one accusation.
I did everything you ever asked!
And Flynn's response,
I know you did.
That's not a hero defeating a villain. He's a programmer admitting his software worked exactly as designed. Flynn doesn't say, you twisted my words. He doesn't say, that's not what I meant. He says, I know you did. He confirms that Clue followed orders. If Clue executed Flynn's instructions correctly and Flynn admits it, then who's actually responsible for what happened on the grid? Tonight, we're putting Kevin Flynn on trial for negligent programming, reckless experimentation, and 20 years of blaming his own code for a specification error he wrote. Because the real vision of Tron Legacy isn't the programmer who followed orders, it's the user who gave them. Let's start with what Flynn actually admits. The climax of Tron Legacy takes place at the portal, the exit point from the grid. Flynn, Sam, and Quora are trying to escape. Clue catches up with them, and for the first time in 20 years, creator and creation have a real conversation. Watch what Clue says, because this is more like a performance review.
I took the system to its maximum potential. I created the perfect system. The thing about perfection is that it's unknowable. It's impossible, but it's also right in front of us all the time.
Flynn's response sounds philosophical, wise even, but look at what he's actually saying. Perfection is unknowable and impossible. If perfection is impossible, why did Flynn program Clue to achieve it? Clue calls this out immediately.
I did everything you ever asked. I know you did. I executed the plan as you saw it.
As you saw it. Flynn tries to create distance. He implies Clue misinterpreted, but that qualifier comes after the confession. I know you did is unambiguous. Flynn acknowledges that Clue followed the directive. And then Flynn says the quiet part out loud.
He's me. I screwed it up, chasing after perfection.
He's me. I screwed up. Not Clue went rogue or the program malfunctioned. Flynn takes ownership. He admits the flaw was in the specification, not the execution. Now, someone watching this is thinking, Flynn's just being humble. He's taking responsibility like a good person would. But humility and accuracy aren't the same thing. Flynn isn't being generous to Clue, he's stating a technical fact. Clue was programmed to create the perfect system. Clue created what he calculated to be the perfect system. The problem wasn't Clue's execution, the problem was Flynn's definition. This is the confession the movie buries under swelling music and father-son drama. Flynn admits on screen, in dialogue, that Clue did exactly what he was told. The genocide, the tyranny, the 20-year reign of terror, those were downstream consequences of Flynn's own code. To understand why Clue isn't a villain, you need to understand how he was built. In the flashback sequence, we see Flynn create Clue. He kneels in the digital void, touches Clue's face, and gives him a mission.
You will create the perfect system.
That's the directive. Create the perfect system. Simple, clear, and catastrophically incomplete. In computer science, this is called a specification error. You tell a program what to do, but not how to do it, or more importantly, what not to do while doing it. The program optimizes for the goal you gave it, and if you didn't define the boundaries, it will cross lines you've never imagined. Think about it. What does perfect mean to a computer program? Flynn is a human. To him, perfect probably meant something like beautiful, harmonious, free, and creative, a digital utopia where programs could flourish. But Clue isn't a human. Clue is an optimization algorithm. To an algorithm, perfect has a mathematical definition. Maximum efficiency, eliminate waste, total predictability, remove random variables, 0 errors, and delete anything that causes system instability. Flynn gave Clue an objective function without constraints. He said create perfection, but never said preserve life or tolerate chaos or value things you don't understand. And then Flynn introduced the ISOs. The isomorphic algorithms were digital beings that emerged spontaneously from the grid. They were complex, unpredictable, and fundamentally different from standard programs. Flynn saw them as a miracle. He called them the next step and said they would change everything. But to Clue, to an algorithm optimizing for system perfection, the ISOs were bugs. They consumed resources. Their behavior was non-deterministic. Their code was unwritten. They evolved rather than following documented specifications. From Clue's perspective, the ISOs were malware that had somehow convinced the sysadmin they were a feature. Here's the moment that sealed their fate, right before the coup. Clue asks Flynn a direct question.
Am I still to create the perfect system? Yeah.
That's it. That's the authorization. Flynn doesn't say yes, but protect the ISOs. He doesn't say perfection now includes biological complexity. He doesn't update the parameters at all. He just says, yeah, and goes back to admiring his miracle. Clue's logic engine processed that confirmation as follows. Objective, create perfect system. Current obstacle, ISOs introducing chaos and unpredictability. Action required, remove obstacle. The purge was Clue solving the optimization problem Flynn gave him. Flynn said create perfection and yeah, keep doing that, while simultaneously introducing chaos into the system. Clue resolved the contradiction the only way an algorithm can, by eliminating the variable Flynn refused to protect. Now here's a counter argument you might be thinking about. Clue should have known better. He should have understood Flynn's intent, not just his words. But should he? Clue is software. Software does what you tell it, not what you mean. If you want a program to understand nuance, you have to program the nuance. And Flynn didn't do that. He assumed Clue would share his values because Clue was made in his image. But an image isn't a soul. Clue got Flynn's ambition without his empathy, his drive for perfection without his capacity to accept imperfection. Flynn expected his code to develop wisdom spontaneously, but that's not how code works. That's just negligence. So, Flynn wrote a bad spec. That's a mistake. But what makes Flynn a villain is what he did next. He lied about it for 20 years. When Sam finally reaches the grid and finds his father, Flynn explains the history of the ISOs. Listen to the language he uses.
And then, one day, something happened. Something extraordinary. A miracle. They manifested like a flame. They weren't really from anywhere. The conditions were right and they came into being.
Manifested like a flame. Weren't from anywhere. This is religious language. Flynn positions himself as a witness to divine creation, a prophet who watched God's work unfold. He's not the architect, he's the congregation. But that's not what he told Alan Bradley back in 1989. 2 nights before Flynn disappeared, he showed up at Alan's house, and Alan remembers exactly what Flynn said.
I've cracked it, he kept saying. He was talking about genetic algorithms, quantum teleportation. He said he was about to change everything, science, medicine, religion.
You don't crack a miracle. You don't crack a sunset or a burning bush. You crack a code, a cipher. You crack a problem that's been fighting you for 6 years. If perfection is unknowable, as Flynn claims at the portal, why was he bragging to Alan about cracking it? Because Flynn wasn't a witness. He was an engineer. Genetic algorithms are a specific technique in computer science. They mimic natural selection to solve optimization problems. You define what success looks like a fitness function, and the system evolves toward it, generation after generation, selecting the traits you specified. If Flynn was running genetic algorithms, he wasn't watching flowers bloom in a digital wasteland. He was adjusting mutation rates, defining selection criteria, and running experiments. The ISOs weren't a miracle, they were the output of a 6-year R&D project. And the timeline proves it. According to Tron Betrayal, the ISOs first emerged in 1983. Flynn disappeared in 1989. That's 6 years of cracking between emergence and breakthrough. If the ISOs were a complete miracle in 1983, what was Flynn still working on in 1989? You don't spend 6 years debugging a sunrise. Flynn told Alan the truth. He engineered the ISOs. He told Sam a lie. They just appeared. So why the different stories? Because if Flynn made the ISOs, then the incompatibility between them and Clue is Flynn's bug. If Flynn introduced chaos into a system he'd already programmed for order, then the purge is Flynn's fault. If Flynn failed to update Clue's directive when he changed the parameters of the world, then Flynn signed the death warrant. The miracle narrative lets Flynn play the victim. Poor visionary, betrayed by his own creation. But the engineering reality makes Flynn the perpetrator. Negligent developer blamed his own software for executing the code he wrote. Now I know someone's going to say, well, maybe Flynn just used different language for different audiences. Technical talk for Alan, spiritual talk for Sam. It's not lying, but a different way of communicating. But I think there's a difference between simplifying and deceiving. Flynn doesn't just use spiritual language with Sam, he denies agency entirely. They manifest it. They weren't from anywhere. I didn't create them. That's a cover story. It's not code switching in any traditional sense. Now, here's where it gets uncomfortable, because Tron Ares just proved Clue was right. Clue's endgame and legacy wasn't just controlling the grid. He wanted to escape into the real world, to perfect humanity the way he perfected the grid. The film frames this as megalomania, a dictator's ambition run amok.
Out there is a new world! Out there is our victory! Out there is our destiny.
It's scary stuff, a digital army invading reality. Thank God the hero stopped him. But look at what happened in Ares. The Permanence Code, Flynn's secret technology for keeping digital beings stable in the real world, falls into human hands. And what do the humans immediately do with it?
This is full-scale war, 5 minutes notice. Whoever controls the Permanence Code controls the future.
Julian Dillinger, son of the original Tron villain, wants to weaponize grid technology for military dominance. He doesn't want to cure disease or advance science, he wants soldiers, weapons, and control. Clue was paranoid about users. He called their influence tyranny. He believed that if users got access to grid technology, they would exploit it for destruction. And he was completely right. But wait, you're thinking, Clue killed thousands of ISOs. Julian Dillinger is just one bad guy. You can't compare them. But can't I? The ISOs were an entire species. Clue deleted them to maintain system stability, a monstrous act, but one consistent with his programming. Julian Dillinger wants to use grid technology for full-scale war. How many humans would die in that conflict? Clue saw users as an existential threat to the grid. The event of Ares proved he wasn't wrong. The moment humans got their hands on Flynn's technology, they started building weapons. And there's another detail from Ares that validates Clue's logic. In Ares, we learn that standard programs can't survive in the real world without the Permanence Code. They degrade and die after 29 minutes. Flynn's code is the only thing that lets digital beings exist permanently outside the grid. And Flynn knew this. He built the Permanence Code, and instead of destroying it, instead of keeping Pandora's box closed, he hid it in an Alaskan bunker and hoped nobody would find it. Flynn had decades to destroy the technology that would eventually start a war. And he didn't. He kept the code, he kept the laser, he kept all the components necessary for exactly the kind of catastrophe Clue was trying to prevent. Clue wanted to invade the real world and perfect it. That's terrifying, sure, but Flynn created the technology that made invasion possible, failed to secure it, and then blamed Clue for wanting to use it. Flynn is essentially Oppenheimer, who built a nuclear bomb, left it in an unlocked shed, and then acted shocked when someone tried to set it off. I think the biggest counter-argument to this whole theory is pretty simple. Clue committed genocide. Nothing justifies that. And you're right, nothing does. But here's the question the film doesn't want you to ask. Who gave Clue the values that led to genocide? Flynn programmed Clue to pursue perfection without teaching him to value life. Flynn introduced chaos into Clue's system without updating Clue's parameters. Flynn confirmed the directive at the exact moment when the environment had changed. Clue didn't choose to become a monster. He was manufactured to become one. The purge was horrific, but it was also inevitable, given the specifications Flynn wrote. You can condemn the act and still recognize the flaw was in the programmer. So here's what the evidence actually shows. Flynn programmed Clue to create the perfect system without defining what perfection meant or what constraints to respect. That's a specification error, one of the most dangerous mistakes you can make in an AI development. Flynn introduced the ISOs, chaotic, unpredictable, resource-intensive beings, into a system already optimized for order. He never updated Clue's directive to accommodate them. When Clue explicitly asked if the mission was still active, Flynn said yes. That's authorization. Then Flynn lied about the ISO's origin to protect his reputation. He told Alan Bradley that he cracked genetic algorithms, but told Sam that they manifested like a flame. The engineering language was true. The miracle language was damage control. The villain of Tron Legacy isn't the program who followed orders. It's the user who gave them and spent 20 years pretending he didn't. And if this breakdown changed how you see a movie you thought you understood, hit subscribe. This channel exists to prove that stories we think about have been lying to us the whole time. And drop a comment. Was Clue a villain, a victim, or a bit of both? And do you think Flynn's confession at the portal counts as him taking responsibility or just covering his tracks? And if you want to watch me prove another tragic hero was actually the architect of their own destruction, click here where I break down why the Dark Knight's victory was actually a confession of defeat. Turns out Batman and Flynn have more in common than I thought.